So, welcome to the winter semester success session for your 12th grade year. I will be, I'm Ms. Weimer. I'm sure as you guys kind of already figured, but Mrs. Barr will be working in the chat. So for those of you that are watching the recording, you may see some of that pop up, or you may hear me refer to things that are not on the screen. That's probably what we're talking about. And I'll try not to distract myself too much, but and this was still the date from last Friday's session that was in person. Our old director, Mr. Spencer, had these sweet little presentations with puppies taking control of each other to tell you to take control of your plan. So that's what we're talking about today. There's a few quick news updates. The main first bit, we're going to talk about getting ready for registration and just kind of refreshing your memory on a few of those things and pointing you to where to find videos if you need a little bit more help. If you want to make meetings, we'll talk about how to do that. And then the next bit is talking about getting ready for next year and the whole college application process. And I will be sending as a follow-up a document that's just kind of a checklist to show you what you'll be doing and kind of when you need to do stuff or when's kind of the ideal time to do stuff. And I'll pull that up and kind of we'll look at that together as well. And so those are kind of the two big things today. Basically preparing for your final year and making sure you're registering well, and then preparing for life after middle college. So it's kind of a big one. You're over halfway through your time with us. So this is the only time we're gonna see you this semester. So just the update that pretty much every semester, you probably noticed the pattern that we can start accepting books the week before finals, and we accept them through finals week and and then the following Monday. And that's the deadline pretty much every semester is the Monday after finals. I always really recommend that you drop your books off after your last exam. And by that Friday, May 3rd, that's usually a good, I think in the in-person session on Friday, some people confirmed that they do that since I recommended it. And it's just a wonderful feeling to do your last exam, drop your books off, and especially for the summer one, you're free from college and you're finishing up your senior year and you can just go do that and have fun and live your best life. So do that rather than turning it in late and getting a fine for a late return. Hopefully everyone is aware and in good status here but you do need to complete all of your high school graduation requirements in order to walk in the ceremony at your home high school for graduation. So like the 4 English, 4 math, that whole thing that Mrs. Barr has been in touch with people about. She sent you a letter last summer letting you know what you had left based on what you had done, and is really good about being able to check your schedule and say, you need one more English, you're taking ELA 12, that's going to do it. So hopefully everybody is pretty aware of where they stand with that. If you are not, contact Mrs. Barr, or if there's a class that you're taking that you know you need for high school graduation, contact any of us and we can kind of help you through that. It might just be that like you're going to keep pushing and trying on that, but it might make sense to also schedule yourself kind of a backup plan and start working on something just in case, so that you're not in a panic situation in the month of May when grades come in. Also, if you are in that boat, you might be kind of around the GPA that is sort of the benchmark. So just, I know we've talked about this pretty much every semester, but if it ever your GPA dips below a 2.0, SC4 puts you on academic warning, and then you have 1 semester to correct that, or you get suspended the following semester. So just every point counts and can help with that and keep your GPA up. We're going to talk more about it from the other side of that, and that getting your GPA as high as possible is really important at this point because you're kind of in these final semesters of being able to impact your GPA. So the difference between a B and a B minus even could make a huge difference as far as your overall cumulative GPA and what you're bringing to the table when you're applying to 4-year schools for your next step after middle college. So preparing for fall registration, there's a lot to consider. We have talked about all these things before. again, if I'm going to say this probably 5,000 times, but if you have questions and you want to talk this through with somebody, I recommend making an appointment sooner than later. You have the whole month of March stretching before us. And so there's plenty of time to get in and talk to me or anyone else in the office and talk about planning for your degree. I can talk about career stuff, transfer stuff. I will tell you my email's already getting flooded. I'm probably going to set up some those like automated appointments where you can click and make your own appointment. And because we're also at the same time that a lot of people want to come in and talk, we're also meeting with the new students that are going to come in. If you remember doing that 2 years ago, where we met and talked about all of this whole thing. So that's what we're doing with 10th graders right now. So we're in and out of the office a lot. And so if it's taking a minute for people to get back to you, just be patient. Probably me. I know I'm slow. I've got a ton of emails that probably I noticed a few names in here that I might owe an answer to. So just I'm working through, I'm trying to do it in order. But sometimes I prioritize panic versus we've got the whole month to meet and we will get it done. So these factors, courses needed for your degree is kind of the number one thing to consider. Looking at prerequisites and making sure you're planning those, looking at what can transfer to other high schools. And then we're going to start with the last thing, which is a math related course for high school. So that probably makes no sense since I just told you you had to have everything done by the end of your senior year in order to march in your graduation. The deal though, is that the state says you have to take 4 credits of math, but then they also say you need a math related experience in your final year of high school. For you people that are going to be doing a 13th year as a Blue Water Middle College student, your 13th year is your final year. So that is why you have to take something math related next year. We've kind of given you the heads up on this. So most people, I think, have kind of saved their SE4 math requirement for 13th year. If you have already finished your SE4 math requirement for your degree, then there's a ton of other stuff that can work. Basically all of those, if you have questions about any of this, just let me know. But if you are still missing you still need to do your math for your degree, that's the perfect way to hit it. But otherwise there's a handful of accounting, astronomy, like other science classes that can work. There's all kinds of stuff that have enough math in it that's not officially like a math class, like pre-calculus or something. But you should only do that if you don't already have, or if you already have your math completed for your degree. On that note, with the math stuff, we have talked about this, so I'm going to go through it fairly quickly. If you have questions about math and what to take and what you need for your degree, this is the time to ask that. And a lot of times people might take, Math 104, it finishes the Associate of Arts math requirement, and that's maybe all you want to do. And then you go and look and say, well, I'm transferring and I want to get a business degree somewhere, and find out that actually those are requiring pre-calc. Sometimes they require Calc 1. And so this is the time to kind of start thinking about where you want to transfer to so that you're taking the correct class for the next step, especially if you're a person that doesn't want to take more math than you need to. SE4 changed the course numbers. All of that is changed. Really, the only reason for you to know that is that if you took a math before the change, that still counts as the new equivalent class. And placement rules are still the same. You can place into math and English with your AccuPlacer score, SAT scores, or there's a new option that you'll be eligible to use after this school year is over to place in with your high school transcript. So if you were going to do that, you have to have both your high school and SE4 GPA need to be a 3.0 or above. And then the math class that you're looking to place into the next thing, like your final math class grade, you have to have a B or higher both semesters. So if that is the case, you can do that. The SE4 policy, though, is that they don't accept that until this school year is over and your final grades are in for your high school. So it is kind of silly because some of you might have taken pre-calc even last year and just be wanting to place into pre-calc, and you've already done it. Your GPA is above the benchmark. You got A's or B's in those classes, but they still don't allow it until you have finished 12th grade. I'm not really sure for the reason for that, but that is their policy. And so they won't let you register until June. I would recommend you still should register a backup plan So like if you can't get into the class that you want, find a different one. But pretty much if you are wanting to take a math class right away in the fall, I would just recommend taking the AccuPlacer and placing into the class that you need and not waiting for the SE4 policy to let you use your high school transcript. And again, if you're unsure about what to take, talk to us, take the AccuPlacer, see where you place, and then we can give you good advice on what to do. And advice on what to do based on where you're placed, but also advice on what to do as far as where you want to go with it next. There is information on the AccuPlacer at this link, and all of these links that are here will be in the presentation that I'll send probably Thursday. And I'll also send the links directly in the email as well. So if you have questions about the AccuPlacer, you can look there or you can email me as well. So another thing is that they created new courses that are called With Support. So Math 1101 Foundations of Math with Support is the same class as Math 1100 Foundations of Math. It just has extra support built in. And same for the Intermediate Algebra and Introduction to Statistics. So they are the same as their standalone class. They're just added time into the week for help from the instructor. So instructors are going to help you in that extra time. They're almost like a math lab where they're going to help you with old skills, like maybe especially for statistics or any intermediate algebra, any of these, there might be skills that you took way back in middle school and pre-algebra, back when you first were learning algebra. And so that stuff might be so old, you just need a refresher on it. If you are a person that's worried about math, these courses are good. And sometimes a downside, I guess, I'm going to skip ahead. They have the lab time built in. The downside is that it's hard to schedule, but the plus is that you have scheduled study time right into your week. So instead of just being in your class for 4 hours a week, you're there 6 hours a week, but that means 2 hours a week. You're getting help from your instructor. You don't have to schedule tutoring time. You can probably do most of your homework in those 2 hours, and it's built into your schedule. So for me, I would find that helpful because sometimes we lose time, right? It's easy to do in a busy schedule, but then with that built in and having direct access to your instructor, that's a huge support and help. They transfer the same as their matching class. So like Introduction to Statistics with Support transfers just the same as Intro to Statistics. These are great because there's no prerequisite. So you can just register for these classes without having taken the AccuPlacer, without having placed into it with your SAT score. So these are wonderful if you want to just register the class and know that you need the extra help. There is a class called Math 1000, Math for Everyday Life, that could be a good option if you have already finished the math for your degree and you're just looking for something for the final year math. It does not count towards the MTA or really any of the associate degrees, and it's not transferable. So it's really just for you. It's actually a really relevant class to life, to your everyday life. But it's also really helpful if you need a math to finish the final year math requirement. It does also work towards the general education degree. I don't think anybody at this point should be working towards a general education degree because it just does not have enough content built into it to transfer very well. The gen ed degree does not complete the MTA like the arts and science degrees do. So if you know that you're transferring on to a 4-year school eventually, the gen ed degree is not what you should be doing. Now, some people will do gen ed and combine that with the MTA. That could be an option. But if you're somebody that's kind of in that boat where you're like, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get all the requirements done for arts and sciences, that should be set up a meeting with me and let's talk about what's the best step and best path for you. Online math courses, I think, I'm going to just say, hot take, it's a terrible idea. Even if you are good at math, I've worked with many students in the last few years or in general they're like, I love math. I have no trouble with math. And then they take an online math and suddenly they have trouble. So it's just very difficult because you don't have access to ask your instructor a question right then and there. And that's usually when you need it, is with math, to just clarify something quick and you'd be able to move on. If math is not your strong suit and it's something you're worried about, I would really, really recommend doing those in person. Most of the time, when people withdraw from math or end up C- or lower, it's usually an online section. So just a word of warning. I know that people will ignore that, and I know people will ignore it and end up needing to withdraw or having issues, and that's fine. We'll work with you, but I will say I really, really recommend you take math in person. There's also an additional English course that's available. So if English is your worry subject, like instead of taking English 101, there's an option English 100, which is the same English composition 1 topics. It just includes basic writing skills. So if you were worried about like, I've never been good at English, I'm not a good writer, I'm nervous about the whole thing, English 100 might be a good spot for you. This is slightly different than the math. You do still have to place into English 100 on the AccuPlacer or with your SAT scores, but it's similar in that it's a 3-credit class on your transcript, but it's 6 contact hours. So 6 hours a week you would be in class. Same as the other stuff, it will transfer just like English 101 and counts towards the MTA and the arts and science degrees. If you were to take English 100, you would do 100 and then 102. You don't have to do 100 and then 101 and then 102. It's basically 100 or 101. So all of this, if you have questions, email me. Again, I've already built this into my presentation, that this is when things really start to ramp up and I start to get flooded with emails. So I'm answering stuff as quickly as I can. And I will get back to you in time for registration. We've got a month and a half, so I definitely will at this point, but it just might not be immediate, but I'll do as quick as I can. Don't be that student, basically making sure that you have all the courses needed for your degree. It's time to do that. Every year at this time, basically when people end 12th grade and in between 12th and 13th year is when, just like Mrs. Barr did a review of everyone's status towards their high school requirements, I do the same thing with your progress towards your associate degree. And then I reach out and send a letter to everybody saying kind of what you have left and making sure everybody's aware of that. And I guess I don't say that. I think I do have it somewhere later. So at this time, most people, like I think when every summer, people pretty much like 80 to 90% of students are on track. And if they pass everything and take the right stuff, they can finish their associate degree. But we only end up with about 60% of people finishing their degree, if that. It's usually maybe sometimes a little bit lower. So that's a big chunk of students that something goes wrong. And oftentimes it's that they've maybe scheduled too light of a course load in the fall and then end up needing to withdraw a class and being behind then because of that. So I would really recommend, if you're nervous about stuff, or maybe kind of like front load your fall classes, make that a heavier semester. And then that makes for a lighter semester in the winter for your final semester at middle college and SE4. But then you also have the room in your winter schedule if something goes wrong fall semester and you need to add another class to make up something that hasn't gone well, either having to fail or withdraw. Another thing too is making sure that you have all the prerequisites done and scheduling things in the fall before you can take the next thing in the winter. There are all kinds of tools at these pages that I'll get to in a second, but basically we are here to help. SE4 advisors are here to help. Anyone in the office pretty much, or well, all of the advisors can help you, as if you just want to like double check your progress towards your degree. If you want to get into more of a conversation about transfer or career ideas, that I would say reach out to me and I'd be probably the one to talk to you about that. But there are some times where, like, if you already have been working with Mrs. Barr or Mr. Ruiz on something, they can also help with that. There's also, if you feel like you kind of have a handle on it and you just need some refreshers, I'll point you to where all that is. So this is our website, bluewatermiddlecollege.org. I've shown you this probably 5,000 times. Under students, there is planning and scheduling, and we've got all kinds of cool stuff there. all of the documents, like the associate degree worksheets are here. The math pathway chart, that program of study, this thing that I love that helps you kind of map out your semesters and make sure that you're getting the total credits that you need, that is there. The Michigan Transfer Agreement Guidelines. So this is basically the thing that's on the back of the arts and science degrees. If you complete the arts or science degree, you are completing the MTA guidelines because these requirements are built into the associate degrees of SE4. But if you're doing a different degree, sometimes people are doing criminal justice, or maybe you have had kind of a rough go and are doing the general education degree just to get something done, but you want to also pair it with the MTA, this worksheet is there for you to check that. And then the math course changes are here. So if you knew back in the day, I wanted to take Math 104, Foundations of Math, that still exists. It's just called Math 1100 now. The course catalog is all updated and listed as the new course numbers. And this all happened like while you guys were still fairly new as 11th graders. So you probably don't even really know or care about the old math numbers, but that chart's there for anybody that wants help there. These videos, our wonderful Mrs. Barr did a really good job of explaining kind of an overview of the arts degree, science degree, applied degrees, and the transfer agreement. So if you want a little refresher on kind of the degree planning and how to do that, those videos are great. There's another page, SE4 registration, that has a video about how to actually schedule your classes. So if you need a refresher on all the service center and how to access that, these are the dates actually from fall semester registration for winter, but the directions are still the same. This is how you get to the service center and actually register. So it's a step-by-step. So you can kind of ignore those dates, and I need to have Mr. Stewart update that, and I keep forgetting to ask. Also here is that AccuPlacer page that I referenced earlier. There's a lot of information here about how to prepare for the AccuPlacer and where to kind of study for that. And then while we're over here, I can show you too the SE4 page about testing. When you are ready to take the AccuPlacer, you can schedule it right here. You just click schedule a test and this pops up and you enter your information. Basically, you're saying I'm taking the AccuPlacer, and enter from there. So that page is really helpful. And if you want a refresher on any of this, but again, we can also talk about this stuff in person too. And those are just the pages that we just looked at. So prerequisites, hopefully everybody kind of remembers what these are, but like you need to take English 100 or 101 before you can take 102, accounting 211 before 212. Some classes like econ have this weird prerequisite that you have to have 20 credits complete or more before you can take econ 221. So if anybody's been waiting to take econs, next fall is probably when you have those 20 credits. Some prerequisites say you have to have a C or better in the first class, and Bio 271 and 272 are an example of that, anatomy and physiology. So it is time to make sure that when you're planning for next year, you really should map out the remainder of your requirements for both fall and winter, and look on the course catalog and make sure you're not scheduling something in the winter that's a fall only or something like that, especially if you're thinking or if you're working on an applied degree. I'm going to just pause real quick the recording. So yes, prerequisites. You're going to have it all planned out. Sorry. Okay, so here's that program of study with the example down below, which is nice. Basically, hopefully you remember last spring, we told you to plan your 12th grade year so that you would have at least 30 credits by the end of this year, so that your 13th year, you would just only need 30 that year. So you'd have an average of like 15 credits one semester, 15 credits the second semester. So like I mentioned, you may want to try to get closer to 17 even if you have some room. Have a tough fall so that you have a lighter winter and you leave some space open in case something goes wrong. So that's just kind of a backup plan. But if, You don't have to do that. You can still spread it out, and that would be fine too. And if you run into trouble, there's lots of other ways to keep moving forward, still transfer on in your third or after your 13th year and get your degree later on. And we can talk about that if you ever run into trouble. So don't make the mistake of not doing the research. It is now time. This is when a lot of people will say like, okay, I've kind of figured out my plan, and we can look at transfer guides at the 4-year school. So like I kind of mentioned with the math, you might have already finished your math requirement for the degree, but if there's a different math that's required, then sorry. Oh, okay. So if there's a different math that's required, then you might still want to take that here while you have the space in your 13th year so that it will transfer for your bachelor's degree. So this is the kind of thing where if you have some ideas about where you want to go and what you want to major in, we can look at that together and figure out what classes you can take, especially because a lot of people are probably getting close to finished with the degree requirements and now have a lot of room for electives. So again, you could take a true elective like piano or ceramics or something like that. But if you know where you want to transfer, then maybe you can take classes that will actually transfer for your bachelor's degree. So if you want to do that, you'd probably have to have some idea about what career you want to do, what level of education required. If you need a bachelor's degree, what would you be majoring in, colleges that you want to go to. And even if you have kind of a loose idea, we can meet and talk this over and look those up. So there's students that I meet with that are like, I don't know, there's like 5 or 10 schools I'm thinking about going to. That's okay. We can look all that stuff up. And I make a little chart that shows if you're transferring to Western for psychology, all of these classes will transfer. Oakland, these classes transfer. And then you can start to see the classes that transfer to most of the schools, and that can be kind of what you prioritize to take in your 13th year. You can research this on your own. I'm always a little tentative to say because I don't want anybody to get lost and then discouraged, but I will show you how I do my research. So in a Google, in a tab, I would say Oakland transfer guides. It was actually, I do this so much, it was trying to tell me the website before I even finished my Google search. And it brings me to this page. Some colleges call them transfer plans. They might call them something slightly different, but usually there's some kind of page where they're like, okay, what community college are you coming from? And we are coming from St. Clair County Community College. And then they have all of the majors here. So if you're thinking, I would like to major in psychology, then it brings up the transfer guide, transferring from SE4 to Oakland, and it tells you what you can take that works towards your major requirements. So not just the general education stuff that the MTA is going to complete for you, but things that will actually work towards your bachelor's degree, like the major classes. So there's a whole bunch of psychology that transfers, and you usually have some options for each thing. So that's all listed up top here. Down below, they explain if you're transferring with the MTA, that satisfies the general education. So you'd want to read through anything they recommend or suggest. Sometimes the best ones, like Oakland, have the place to contact the advising for that particular degree. Oakland's transfer guides are just amazing. Sometimes I use these if people are like, I really don't know where I want to go. Or if you're thinking about going out of state and we can't look this stuff up because it's just not all there. Every database doesn't have every community college going to every college in the world. It's just kind of within Michigan that we can access that so easily. But I use Oakland as usually kind of like a benchmark that if it transfers here, it's probably safe to assume it transfers most places. Other schools do have them. Some schools like my alma mater, Michigan State, I am disappointed to say, does not have transfer guides, but you can look at what the degree requires. And then this is where I can help you with the different tools that are out there, find what transfers. Okay, so MSU's page also is hard to navigate. Sometimes you get in a loop, but you can look at all the majors. And let's just choose an easy one, like if you were going to major in accounting. And so here we brings us to the accounting page. You really sometimes have to sift through here to find, here we go, they hide it, view courses. And this brings us to the course catalog. So some schools, like Michigan State, you have to do a little digging. But that's what I can help with. So you can do some of the searching on your own or reach out to me. Sometimes you can just say, I'm thinking about transferring to maybe these 5 schools are what I'm thinking about, and I'm going to major in business, and I'm not even sure which business major yet. I can look that stuff up and even email it to you, and then we could meet from there if you have more questions. C4 advisors can also do this. And once we kind of have our plan, we can have it double checked or triple checked by the colleges that you're thinking about transferring to. So I think, and then the MTA we did already look at. So MTA, this is where we are looking at it, but we did kind of already talk about it and look at that sheet. And again, if you are earning the arts or science degree, you're also completing the MTA requirements. I'm glad Mrs. Barr is laughing at me. You guys probably all are too. I'm just here in my house talking into the void, and you guys are all probably like, you're crazy. Okay, so the planning and scheduling, I also pointed out, but all of that stuff is listed there. And again, we can help with that. The big thing is make sure you have all your prerequisites planned. Make sure you're going to get your total credits. Sometimes people will look at the list that I send them and only just see, like I'll say, you have 1 more humanities, you need to take 2 science, and then whatever math. And then they miss the part that says you need to make sure you're getting your 60 total credits. So you might need 30 total credits next year. So make sure you pay attention to that when I send that over the summer. And again, I can help you with that. Be careful of online courses, especially as you're getting into these final semesters and the classes are getting more difficult. If you're on the flip side, doing all of your classes in person, try not to stack too much on one day or like all on Tuesday and Thursday. That is really, really tempting. And you guys are going to be so pleasantly surprised. We've heard this every year. When people start their 13th year, they're like, oh, it's such a relief not to have to go to high school and then here and then back to high school for sports and then go to work. It's just school and work pretty much. We all have interests and hobbies, but it lightens the load a lot that you're not having to balance quite as many things. And so it is tempting to say, I'm going to put all of my classes Tuesday, Thursday, so I can work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, all weekend, and schedule yourself no time to study or do the work. So just be very careful about that. I totally understand. Basically all of us at the middle college, we're all students that did not have a lot of extra money in the family. So I know I had to work pretty full-time hours while also going to college, and it's very difficult. So I understand that balance, but if you're taking on too many hours and your grades are suffering, then that can affect you as far as what scholarship money you're going to get. And that really can make a huge difference. More so than like the money that you're making at your part-time job right now. So it's a hard balance, but we can help you kind of figure it out too. So registration opens Monday, April 15th. As we know, that's Sunday night at midnight, technically. So I think a few years ago, everyone was staying up until midnight, and I've kind of started to talk people out of it because it just so often would crash at midnight, and then you're frustrated, freaked out, it's midnight, and everything doesn't work. You might as well just wake up and do it in the morning before you go to school. And really, if you do it even Monday or Tuesday through the day, probably you're fine. But there are some times where a certain section might fill up. And if you have a class that you really, really need and want, and there's only maybe one section of it, it might be worth maybe get up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. when no one else will be in there. But probably you're safe to just do that when you get up before school Monday morning. You don't need to register for everything all at once, but I would recommend make a full schedule, make your best guess, get a schedule together as soon as possible, and you can always adjust it later if you want. The Service Center refresher is over on that website or on our webpage that I showed you. So go back and look at that if you need some help. But I think you guys at this point, this will be like your third semester you're registered yourself. So probably most people are pretty familiar with it at this point. Okay, so we're not done yet, but the homework is kind of directly related to this. So it's a Google form. You're used to these as well. And you did pretty much the same thing last spring. It is this, I'll put this link in the chat in just a second, but this is basically just walking you through your info, and really it's asking just kind of, do you know what you have left for your degree? And then the other piece of it is asking again, what do you want to do for a career? Do you know what degree you need to get? Do you know kind of what it takes to get there? So give it your best guess, ask if you have questions, but just do that. And basically, I think I want it done like in the next, I think you have like a month. Actually, it says it right on the side. So let me go back to that. I would love it by March 15th, which is just a couple weeks away, but that gives you a full month of having that done and already being prepared for registration on April 15th. So let me put that in the chat. Sometimes typing that in doesn't always come up, but hopefully you can click on that, although it looks like it's doing something wonky. Yeah, it just is a picture of it. That's so stupid. Let me put the actual link here. But if you were to type in that tiny URL, it should bring you to the right place. And that link does too, if you just want to click on it and just have it up, and then you can go back to it later. Okay, so moving on to life after middle college and preparing for college applications. Actually, while I'm out here, I forgot to pull this up. So this checklist I'll be sending you, this is something that just kind of maps out when the ideal time for each of these steps of the college application process and financial aid process are. Because a lot of times we have people show up in August and they're already panicked. You do not have to panic. You have plenty of time. So next fall, basically the first couple of weeks of the semester, we'll have your next success session, and that's where we'll really get in a lot more detail about college applications. But I'll go through this checklist in just a second to kind of point out some things that you can do over the summer and to start thinking about even this spring to get ready for that. What you should be doing right now is narrowing down schools that you might want to go to and schools you might want to apply to. Excuse me. If you are able to do some campus visits, I really recommend that. I have always wanted to get those restarted and just haven't gotten that far. But there's lots of the high schools offer them. Different organizations around the county offer them. You can go with your parents. You could go visit a friend that's already away. But if you can get yourself onto some campuses, I really recommend that. Check their programs. So look around their websites and see, do they have what you actually want to do? Sometimes people get like very focused on, my whole family has gone to Western, so I'm going to Western, without really thinking about, do they have the program that you want to do? So that would be stuff to check and just kind of do that Google research that was similar to what we just did with the transfer guides. These search tools are great where you can put in, what career you think you want to do, and it will allow you to narrow things down to find out what colleges offer that. I can also help with that. We'll have a success session to explain all of this in more detail, and I'll just kind of pop over to the handout that I'll be emailing. So this summer, or even now, you can start thinking about what colleges you want to apply to. I'm going to zoom in here so we can get this in detail. So you should include the dream school, one or two of the dream schools maybe, but also include a safe school that you know for sure will accept you, and a financial safe school that you would be able to afford. Oftentimes those are pretty similar. There is a new thing that a bunch of colleges made called, it's like MAAP, the Michigan Assured Admission Pact. And basically these 10 schools down here at the bottom have said, if you have a 3.0 or higher for your high school GPA, you are you are guaranteed admission to that college. You still have to apply and do the paperwork of it, but you can know that you're going to get in for sure. So any of these would be great, safe schools if you have a 3.0 or higher GPA. They're also probably pretty good bets if you might even be a little bit below that. It wouldn't be guaranteed. You can click on that, which I did on accident, but it brings you to the page on the actual college website that kind of explains the whole application process there. So those are a good place to look. I will include that in the email that I send you. And then you'd also want to look at the application deadlines. So thinking about dream schools, there's these things called early admissions or early decision. Those are basically like, if you get in, you're guaranteed, or you are telling them you're definitely going to go there. So you would not want to apply early decision or early action to anywhere but your #1 top dream school. You can't do it to multiple schools, because then basically you don't get into probably any of them, because they do know that when people do that. So do as many tours as you can, study for and retake the SAT if possible. And then in the fall, we will be talking about this at the first success session, but you can start working on your applications. Basically, I think in September is when they open for the next school year. If you start working on college applications before the success session, you have to know you are applying as a freshman and your high school is Blue Water Middle College. Every single year, we have people do this wrong and apply as transfers, or apply and put Port Huron Northern. And I say Port Huron Northern because I'm also alumni there. And it always aggravates me when my fellow alumni are saying the wrong thing there. Your actual high school, all of you, is Blue Water Middle College. It's not your home high school. You will never have a transcript from Port Huron Northern or Algonac or wherever your home school was saying that you graduated from there. So that is why that doesn't work, and people always get caught. So I think most people do it by accident, but it is something that can become anywhere from just kind of a minor paperwork issue that you have to deal with to a big deal where the admissions department it kind of can create some havoc and make a big problem. If you use any common applications, you have to list a counselor, and that would be me. So that's not your counselor at Northern, that is me. So you would put my information there and maybe give me a heads up you're going to do that, so I can make sure I watch for it. Over October in Michigan is called College Application Month. So a lot of schools waive their application fees in October. Again, my alma mater, Michigan State, lets me down sometimes with the website and the admissions process. They only waive their application fee for their first week of October. So if you really want to be totally ahead and on the ball, you can have your ideas of where you're going to apply over the summer. In September, start your applications. You can start them and save your work and keep kind of going in and out of it, and without having to submit it. So you don't have to do it all in one sitting, but get all that started. And then October 1st, when everything's free and there's no application fee, you can submit everything. You would be on the front end of finishing that stuff. Usually the first early admission or early decision stuff deadlines are usually October 31st or November 1st. So you'd be way ahead of the game. You'll request your transcripts from us. We'll send you a parchment account over the summer, and that's how you would order your Blue Water Middle College transcript, which is your high school transcript. Don't order the Port Huron Northern one. You're going to order the Blue Water Middle College one. We both use parchment, so that becomes confusing, but you'll get that invitation from us over the summer. And then you'll probably also want to send your SC4 transcripts, but that costs like $5. So I would say wait for the college to ask for it. So all of that is kind of the first things to get started, but I'll give you this whole checklist in the email just to kind of give you an idea of when you're going to do everything next year. So applying as a freshman, Blue Water Middle College is your high school. No one in this Zoom is going to make that mistake. right. You're all nodding and saying right back to me. But please don't do that. It's just so much easier if you just do it correctly the first way, or the first time. If you have not retaken the SAT and you're not happy with your SAT score, I would really, really recommend that you retake it. If you have retaken it, let us know. It can make a huge difference in your acceptance possibilities and scholarship money. So it's worth it unless you got a perfect 1600, which I don't think I heard of anybody that did that in the Blue Water Middle College. So everyone should retake it. You've already experienced the test, you've seen it, that helps. And if you can do some more practice, your score, the data shows the more you practice, the more your scores go up. You can Google SAT test dates like I have here. And it brings you to the SAT page where you can actually register. This is different, like you wouldn't be taking this at your high school. I think the closest test center is Cardinal Mooney in Marine City. That was the latest, most recent one. June 1st is a good one to hit if, you know, your school year is fresh in your mind. But I know that's prom and graduations and all that stuff. So you can also take it through the fall. You can even take the December one, and that will help for scholarship eligibility. But if you want it to have your score back in time for college applications and admission decision, you do basically need to take the August or October one in order to have that back in time. College Board and Khan Academy are still great prep and practice resources. They are free. It is easy. If you gave it just a few hours, it would make a difference. If you can give it more, it would make a bigger difference. So ask for help if you want to access those. Again, if you have any questions, let us know, set up an appointment, email me, email anybody. If you're already working with Mrs. Barr or Mr. Ruiz, you can do that too. And then I will get back to people as soon as possible and get those meetings going. There's a lot to plan and consider over the next few weeks, but it's worth it to make sure that you stay on track. So we're going to end here. Again, this is that same slide. It's the same link. This is not a new assignment, but just another view of that link if anybody wants to take a picture of it, or just you can click on it in the chat. Sorry, I'm just trying to stop the recording and my thing keeps disappearing.